welcome to Inside the Creator's Mind, presented by Web Series Canada. I am here today with writer, director, producer, and editor Asli Dukan from Resistance, the Battle of Philadelphia. Thank you so much for joining us today from Philadelphia.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So, Asli, this series was first created in 2018 and is very timely today with the theme of police brutality, especially with this year and the tragic death of George Floyd and all that's happened. Can you speak a little bit to the evolution from 2018 to now and how this past year has felt for you, having, this has been something important to you for a long time now?
Well, in one way, it's like, wow, some of the things that I had happen in the series or in the world building videos that I built around the story seem to have come true, right? As far as like more police brutality, more surveillance, even to a certain extent, there's a president who maybe didn't want to give up his power at some point, that was even something that I thought about in the world building for the series. But in other ways, it is very much not a wow, because I was really just pulling from history and pulling from things that have happened throughout history in the United States in particular, but just all around the world, and just kind of resetting it in a near future kind of situation. So partly surprised that some of the things that I thought about specifically came true so soon, but not really surprised because these things have been happening for a long time. Also, it's just like I had been participating in a lot of protests prior to even getting into the series, not just around George Floyd, which happened, but also Breonna Taylor and people before that who were killed by, state violence, basically. And so that feeling just felt like things were growing and people were responding differently to it. More people were responding to it. More outrage was happening, and larger masses of people were kind of coming out to the streets with me and with others, kind of protesting this kind of violence in the street. So I'm not surprised that the things that I wanted to talk about in the series kind of are still with us in the world that we live in. Absolutely.
And can you speak a little bit to why Philadelphia was such a good location, why you chose Philadelphia as the setting for this story specifically, and maybe touch on a little bit, you had, significant, imagery like Malcolm X in the park, and there was different symbolism. So what made Philadelphia the best location for this particular story?
Mm-hmm. So it's often said that Philadelphia is the poorest big city in the United States. And if you think about like the population that it has and the amount of people who are in poverty, you kind of see that it is a place that is ripe for people wanting to change things, people wanting better lives, a transformational change, So I think that the conditions are ripe here for that kind of resistance or even kind of revolutionary thought to happen. On another level, Philadelphia, it's the American project. It's a colonial city. The 13 colonies, continental congresses happened here, Declaration of Independence, temporary capital of the United States. So I think like all those themes of revolution are kind of just in the air in this particular city out of like all the cities in the United States, and that, to make a work that touches upon those themes just makes sense, that, people still want better lives. People still want transformation of their lives in the city that is known for that, that kind of those historical situations who have occurred.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I loved about your show is your use of poetry that was really threaded beautifully throughout. And I just wanted to ask, why poetry for you? Why did that make sense to use that medium in this series?
Well, I'm an artist. I just don't make films. I have always been some type of artist, visual artist. I've drawn, I've done sorts of types of dance, performance and such. martial arts. So I've done capoeira for many, many years, and that's very performative. So I've always been involved in the arts. Maybe not so much poetry, but poetry is really attractive to me, and the people who put themselves out there in the world, who can relay their emotions and their thoughts and their feelings about things. It's just really an amazing kind of art form for me. And just growing up, Philadelphia-based poets were on my mind. You know, they were some of the hottest poets, you know, Ursula Rucker and Lisa Jessie Peterson, for instance, were people that were in my mind as a young person, and they're from Philadelphia. As I moved to Philadelphia from New York, you know, I'd come across some other amazing poets here, Yolanda Wisher, Vision, and then like Sonia Sanchez, who's not from Philadelphia, but who has transferred her, you know, she has moved here. It's a very big presence here in Philadelphia as far as on the poetry scene. And so Philadelphia just, you know, it was just something that was on my mind, and I kind of wanted to honor that and bring that into the storyline, because the people that I was looking up to were talking about certain types of situations that I thought could be reflected in the storyline as far as, like, you know, the conditions of their lives.
There were also quite a few futuristic visual cues, some sort of steampunk elements to the series. How do you feel about the future? How do you feel? Are you optimistic about the future? And what's your general sentiment about that?
Generally, I think we're in a lot of trouble right now, just on a worldwide scale, not just in the United States. Or I'm not too familiar with what's going on in Canada, but I imagine a lot of the issues that we're dealing with are, you know, kind of spread out. Inequality, specifically in the United States, I can speak to white supremacy and misogyny and the ways that it affects the marginalized populations here. Climate crisis, you know, obviously around the world, wars and other types of conflicts, you know. So I think there's a lot going on to be worried about, and for people to kind of get behind working for change. And I, you know, I bring it all back to capitalism. Like, I think like capitalism has a big hand in how all these things can be affected and affect the lives of marginalized people. With that said, I do have a revolutionary optimism about the world, because I've seen people really work hard to try to make change. I've read histories about people who have really worked to try to make change in the lives of as many people as they can possibly affect. So I have hope and revolutionary optimism that things can change. I've seen even this past summer, and I'm in Philadelphia, which had one of the largest kind of turnouts in the protest against police murder, and specifically around George Floyd, but other issues, Breonna Taylor and such, but also other issues around inequality, around surveillance, around, you know, misogyny, all these kind of things. People, like, I think we had 100,000 people in the streets, you know, by some estimates. And that makes me hopeful that, you know, that mass movements such as that can happen when people have said, you know, I'm ready for change. I've had enough of this. Maybe a little bit of our previous president kind of pulled people out into the streets because they saw like really how bad it could get in those kind of forms. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, I think if we have some kind of understanding of what the situation we're in and how, for instance, capitalism affects so many things, and then we kind of adjust our resistance and our ways of trying to change the world in those ways, I think that with the masses of people that came out, I think that we could be unstoppable.
And along those same lines in the show, you have a line, you know, we need to do more. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that's really close to your hearts that you know, really believe in that, you know, we should be doing?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can, personally, I've stepped up my participation in trying to affect change. I've joined organizations, I've been out in the streets, I've supported people, I've helped around the neighborhood. We've done a lot of mutual aid, and we've done a lot of learning situations where we can teach people about the history of what's going on around a particular issue. And so I'm I think that that's the future. I think if more people got involved in those kind of ways, that, you know, that we could really make changes in the world, and not just restricted, as I said before, not restricted to the United States. Like, we have to understand it on an international level, because what happens here affects other places, right? So also just to kind of broaden your idea of transformation in the world.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about the filmmaking process, this project, and your creative process, and how it came to be and really got off the ground?
Well, my filmmaking process, I have been trained. I've gone to film school, a couple of film schools, so I've been kind of technically trained about filmmaking, but a lot of my process has been after school and just kind of going out there and figuring out ways with not a lot of resources how to make things happen. So this Resistance series, for instance, I actually wanted to work within the community and work with more people from the community to create this project instead of me kind of being the main person. So I built a collective together of people who were artists and other types of media makers and social justice activists and people from the community. And I was like, how can we tell this story together? And consequently, like, yes, I have some professional actors in there, but I also have some people who actually do the real work that we see happening in the series in it. And so that has been my process of late. I have other projects that I work on, and they all have their own processes depending on like what the needs are for the work.
And you're in pre-production on season 2?
Absolutely. I was lucky enough, or I've received funding through a couple of institutions in Philadelphia and also through the Sundance Institute. The Independence Public Media Foundation and Sundance gave me money specifically to work on season 2 of the Resistance series, which I'm calling R2 now. So we hope to shoot maybe after the summer. We just went through some auditions and we've been doing some pre-production. I have 2 great producers on board who are new to the project, Nikki Harmon and Sarah Mueller. So I'm really excited to work with them because they're really great and really great filmmakers themselves.
Great. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And where's the best place for us to find more information on you and your work online?
Mm-hmm. So I am reachable in a few places. My personal artist website is my name, Asli Dukan, MASLIDUKAN.com. I also have a business. It's Mizan Media Production. So it's mizanmedia.com, MIZANMEDIA.com. And then I'm on all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at my name, Asli Dukan.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on the show and on making such important work. Congrats.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's been a real pleasure to have my film play in your festival and get out to other audiences outside of where my immediate audience in the United States. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for tuning in to episode 2 of Inside the Creator's Mind. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below.